Hi everyone, welcome to Third Coast Gaming Radio. It is August 16th. Today is Monday. It is episode 39. Thank you for joining us. I'm joined by my host, Austin Taylor. Hello.
Oh, I have a case of the Mondays.
Ooh-wee, it's Monday.
God, that is probably the worst.
Another manic Monday.
That's probably the worst intro I think I've ever done on this show, but I stand by it.
Is it Manic Monday? Is that a song reference? I just have that stuck in my head when it's
what?
Monday.
We can do
just
this
another
thing.
Manic Monday.
Yep, it is. Manic Monday is a song by the Bengals.
Another Manic Monday. I just think of it as like a pop punk thing saying, I can't listen to this.
I can't. I'm not going to listen. I can't open this right now.
I am going to listen to this, but I have to change my... Yep. Another Manic Monday. It just makes me think of that song where they're like, you know, we've got a lot of things in common. We both had Tiffany's breakfast, but that's just all we had. I'm probably misquoting that. What the fuck is that ska band about Tiffany's?
We've lost the audience.
What's...
All three of them.
We had breakfast at Tiffany's, but that's all we had. Blah, 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 blah. You know what I'm talking about, Austin? Don't worry about it. I gotta move on.
I've seen Breakfast at Tiffany's.
There's a song that's talking about Breakfast at Tiffany's.
Oh, okay.
Specifically.
I don't think I've messed with that then. Like, the only interaction I've had with Breakfast at Tiffany's was like a sort of like a sociology class that was like, so like racism in America, right? I said, what are you talking about? I'm 18. We solved racism in the 60s. That kind of thing.
I will tell you, this song is like, we both saw Breakfast at Tiffany's and both kind of liked it, and that's all we had. And now that we don't have that, we don't have anything. It's like about a relationship based on interests.
Yeah.
Where your interests fade away.
Yeah.
Over time.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been in some of those.
Yeah. All right. Hey, video games. I'm going to quick pivot. Not even going to transition about it. I played Red Dead. I got a new update on Red Dead Online. Red Dead Redemption 2. It's called Call to Arms, and it is a survival-based mode.
Ooh.
It's wave-based. You just load into it, and you can play it. You don't need... Like, there are some updates in that game where you... Like, the most recent one was, like, the blood money stuff, where you need this thing called Capital or Capitale to go start missions and stuff. This one, you just queue into it, and you go play some, and it's a good time. One sec. So... It's wave-based. I'm going to tell you a story. I'm going to start with the story, and then we'll talk about kind of what the loop of this thing is.
Yeah.
So I'm in Blackwater starting this up. You can kind of pick whichever area you want to go play it. It's up to 4 people. So I queue in with, it's me and 2 other people. And the beginning of the match, we're in Blackwater. It's like this, like you've played it, but for people who haven't, it's like a more urban, more dense style like map in the Red Dead Redemption like Western series.
Yeah, it's like brick roads, right? Like 2-story, like to 3-story buildings. Like it is the sort of the start of what we recognize as as air quote like industrial America.
Yeah, and you hang around a lot of it like at the end of like Red Dead 1 from what I remember. So it's a very familiar map to me as like I've been around it and like the story mode of Red Dead 1, the online, and like this game's online, which it's set up the same way. You have like a town hall in the back, and you have like a street of and it's like has 2 sets of buildings that are all facing each other, and then it has like a hill that goes up with some like houses and stuff. So when you're starting these matches, there's 10 rounds, and the first couple of matches, it's not really throwing a lot of enemies at you. It'll start with like 20, and then it'll go up from there. And I think round 10 has like 80 enemies, and it does them in sets. Like it'll throw you some enemies, you'll get rid of them, and they'll throw you some more. So what ends up happening, the beginning of this match, I realized, it has a couple markers on the map. So we're going to set up these guys. They're like some NPCs we can set up at posts, and they'll set up positions either on the ground level or on top of roofs. So you'll go up to them and you'll have them follow you, and you'll go walk over to like an area that's one of like many areas where you can let them set up. It's like predetermined.
Yeah.
So you go there, and then it has some horses on the map. You don't bring your horse into it, but you bring all your weapons and your tonics and your items. Mm-hmm. So the first thing I realized is I got onto a horse, and you started running around. And the optimized thing for me was in the beginning, I'm just riding around on a horse with a shotgun. And whenever a dude starts coming in from Blackwater, because they come in from the outskirts. They come in from like the hill that's north to me, or a hill with some houses to the east of me, or from the south, there's like some camps they'll come in from. Yeah. So I'm just running around with this horse, running around. Me and the other two people who are playing are all on horses with shotguns and pistols, like horseback, like dropping people to get through the first couple of waves really fast. And as the difficulty starts spiking, it starts off with like regular enemies, then it'll send guys with machetes at you, and then there's a couple of like stronger enemies it'll send who have like the bucket hats, or like kind of these armored enemies who show up in other places. And you don armor in like a different mission with them to where you have more health. So they have more health. The way I ended up taking them down is I'll throw some dynamite at them or some explosive rounds. And then you also have carriages that'll come up and attack you, as well as some horse-drawn like machine gunning carriages where it's like a big metal box with a machine gun at the top with a cover and a little eye hole for you to shoot in and for them to look out of, drawn by two horses. And those show up in like the 8th, 9th, and 10th rounds. So this is escalating and getting harder. And it's in my perfect round, which I had last night. I got to round 6, and then I post up on top of a Blackwater theater, which is like towards the south side. But a lot of the rooftops in Blackwater are kind of connected. So I can go from the theater to down to like a smaller building and across to like another building, which are usually connected by stairs or like some ladders.
Yeah.
And so there are enemies coming in from south, from east, and from north. My teammates are kind of covering 2 areas, and I'm usually covering the south and the southeast. So I'm sitting up there with a sniper rifle, these 2 pistols, and a repeater. And by the time I'm like at round 8 or 9, I don't really have a lot of ammo left, and my 2 other teammates die on me in round 9. Every round they'll respawn, like at the beginning of the round. Yeah. They'll come back. Yeah, so they both die on round 9. And I'm sitting there on top of this roof, fucking murdering everything as fast as I can. And there are people climbing up the ladders, getting to the same floor as me, while I'm being shot at by dudes who are over east of me and south of me with rifles. And then I have machete guys trying to get to me. And at some point, I had 2 of the heavily armored guys coming up to me to try and attack me. And it feels like that scene in Saving Private Ryan where there's the sniper on top of the bell tower, and I'm just reloading and trying to shoot as many people as I possibly can.
Yeah, before the tank realigns.
Yeah. And then at some point you're kind of losing health, and I start drinking moonshine because it recovers your core. And I'm drinking it by accident because I was trying to get something to. There's like some of those drinks you can use that are like that will permanently make your core stronger so you can take more shots.
Yeah.
That don't get you drunk. So at one point I was by myself drinking moonshine, getting drunk, and still trying to murder people. And if you've ever consumed alcohol in Red Dead, it makes you a worse shot and the screen is shaking the whole time. So I'm being fucking surrounded by enemies. My screen is shaking, and I have double pistols out trying to murder anyone who's close to me, and then switching to a rifle, getting to anyone who's far away from me. This is all happening when there's about 30 enemies left, and most of them are on the map coming at me.
Yeah.
And when the 2 heavily armored dudes come up to me, I'm like, oh, fuck. I don't really have any ammo, and I don't want to chuck dynamite at these people because I might kill myself. So I see a bow and arrow you can pick up because there's a couple weapons that are scattered around the map that'll let you pick up. So I grab it, and I remember someone on Reddit talking about, hey, the bow and arrow has dynamite ammo you can use. So I go pick up the bow and arrow really fast, and I get to cover and I aim the dynamite bow and I just snap two of them off really fast at this heavily armored dude, and it blows him up and sends him flying. I'm like, that was really satisfying. So I'm just constantly up there, and I waste all my ammo, and I'm basically out, and I have to run down and go pick up a repeater at one point because I'm out of like my pistol ammo because I brought semi-auto pistols with me and I burnt through all of it. And at some point I go back up the stairs and I pick up there's like a Schofield revolver. So I put that in my right hand, and then I have my other semi-auto pistol in my left hand. So whenever I go to like these ammo chests that you can pop open and refill your ammo, I can get ammo for both of them. So at some point I'm trying to learn how to conserve my ammo. I survived wave 9 and I'm like, I'm a fucking god. And then we get to wave 10, there's a bunch more enemies, but my other two teammates go get on rooftops and do the same thing I did, to where we're all sniping dudes who are coming at us instead of like gung-hoing it on the ground or running around. So it's a pretty good experience so far. We got to wave 10, we beat it. I got $900 and 3 bars of gold.
All right.
And right now it's like triple rewards, which is really cool. So I'm going to be doing this for a bit. It's a good time.
Nice. Yeah, I was about to say, like, I mean, there's no, because, like, they had a similar mode like this in GTA 5. And, like, the reason you couldn't, like, get on a rooftop in GTA 5 and just, like, snipe at people is because, like, you had police helicopters at a point once you got pretty far into this horde mode. So the fact that, like, y'all just weren't always doing that in this RDR2 horde mode is a bit baffling to me. So they don't have, like, a response. Like, I don't think that game's, like, Arsenal of Enemies has a response to that strategy.
So some maps will have a dude set up on a cannon.
No, okay.
At the edge of the map and shoot at you. Thankfully, Blackwater doesn't really have that.
Yeah.
But I was playing on the there's like a military compound that is Fort Mercer, I think is what it's called, and those will have those set up. The thing about the rooftops is it's easy for enemies to end up getting near you if you're not paying attention to them.
Yeah.
Which if you're maintaining it, you can kind of keep track of it. I've had some times where the horse-drawn carriages with the machine gunner on it will come into town and stop somewhere, and I'm trying to shoot it, and it will just aim at me and drop me, like, after, like, a second of fire. So if I'm trying to shoot at it, it'll just drop me. And I've had rounds where it's the 9th round and I get dropped by that, and I'm waiting for my other two teammates to try and beat the round, and then they lose because, like, in the very beginning, I'm trying to drop this machine gun carriage instead of dealing with the other enemies. Because what I've sometimes done is left the cart and dealt with all the other enemies and get back to it later. But yeah, the rooftops, pretty good choice. A lot of times, the people in the beginning, even myself, we do the horse thing because the enemies are a lot easier and it's faster to just run around on the horse.
Yeah. And, like, this isn't...
But yeah, it's definitely safer on the rooftops.
Yeah, and that's not your horse is the thing, right? Like you said, that it's not your horse. So, like, how do you switch out weaponry? Because, like, my understanding, like, this game's mechanics are, like, you have a limited amount of guns that you can carry, but, like, all of your guns are on your horse.
So your inventory, when you load up the mission, is whatever weapons you have equipped on you before you start it.
All right.
So at the beginning of mine, I grabbed a bolt rifle, a Lancaster repeater, and then my 2 pistols. Sometimes I'll bring the Carcano rifle, which is super strong in this because it is usually a 1-shot or a 2-shot kill. And when you reload it with like a clip of 5 instead of doing them individually like you do with like the bolt action. And those spawn at the rooftops after like wave 5 or 6. So after you get into the area, there's weapons scattered around that these weapons aren't upgraded from like the gunsmith. Like you can do the rifling or make the barrel longer. They're just standard.
Yeah.
But if you have that weapon already, it'll give you more ammo. And it also let you change it. Like rounds 1 through 3, there's a bunch of double barrel shotguns on the ground. Eventually there'll be a pump action or a semi-auto. Same thing as like some pistols, as they've the weaker ones, and as you get farther in the rounds, it'll spawn some new ones. There's also some dynamite and some fire bottles you can pick up. So they do give you like the ability to where on this rooftop that I had, there's a pistol, an arrow, and a sniper rifle I can kind of all have within my reach.
Yeah.
And then on the ground floor, there's usually a bunch of weapons scattered around. But if you're in the middle of a round and you're trying to go for a weapon, you got to be super careful. Like if a repeater just has a lot of ammo, and you can usually two-shot people with it. So it's a nice stable weapon, like a 2 or 3 shot, and you don't have to, like, you know how in Red Dead when you have your sniper rifles, if you try to zoom it when you aim with a sniper rifle, it goes instantly to scope. You can't like aim it off to the side with the reticle on the screen.
Yeah. They'd be too powerful.
But it's cool. I'm having a really good time. I've played about 5 rounds of it. I've beaten 1 round. When I've gotten around 8, I think I got like $350. It'll give you some more money if there's the 10 NPCs around the town. If they all survive, I think you get more money. But so far, great payout. Only took us about 40 minutes, and it's probably the best Red Dead update so far for me.
Yeah.
Which is surprising that the Blood Money stuff came out last week or 2 weeks ago, and it was shitty. And now they put Survival out, and it's like, I'm on the Reddit. Everyone's like, yeah, Survival's awesome. Can't wait till they nerf the payout, and we all get tired of it. But at least there's a pillar of these Rockstar Online games that I think Survival and Horde modes should always launch with.
Yeah.
Like GTA Online on PS3 launched with the Survival mode, and I played that a lot. Mm-hmm. And I like it because the pay is usually good. You get good levels, and you get the you just get like a loop of you just shooting enemies and like having fun with the gameplay. And there's not a lot of stuff between it.
Yeah, like absolutely. Like it baffles me when I see like a game that wants like to have like a persistent community and like player presence that doesn't launch with like a good PvE mode, right? Because like PvP stuff is, is what it is, right? Like people know what the internet's about. People have heard stories. Like I would engage with like a lot more games like with like strong like PvE elements to it. Like that's why, even at first blush, like the most interested I'd probably been in like something like Rainbow Six Siege for the better part of several like years at this point, was like when they announced Extraction, right? You like that kind of thing. Like PvP modes I like appeal to me a lot more than stuff like PvP.
Yeah, they're really good. And even when like there are like I will talk about like PvE modes in like the PS2 Star Wars Battlefront, where they're basically multiplayer matches, but I'm just doing bot matches and hanging out and having a good time, and there's a lot of options. Like so this game, when this game Red Dead Online launched for Red Dead Redemption 2, it gave you those missions in the beginning where you have those, it's like a set of 10 missions that you do.
Yeah, like a little story.
You have good payout, and then when you beat them, you can't go back to them, and you're not making as money as you did in those missions. And then after that, you have to use gold to buy the roles that they've slowly launched as DLCs. Like they probably launched with the Bounty Hunter, and then they got the Naturalist and this other stuff. But you have to use the gold you get or the gold you buy from the store.
Yeah, like that premium resource.
The premium resource, which you get a little bit of. It's like the second currency type. Although that was in a way to where the dailies were set up in a way where you could keep doing dailies, and people have like 300, the longtime players who've played it for a while, and a lot in the very beginning probably have like 400 gold and stuff, so it's nothing to them. So they did change that. But yeah, I'm glad they have this. It took them a while to do it. One sec. But that's going to lead me into this other thing I'm talking about, where the updates for Red Dead Online are seeming to have slowed down since launch.
Oh, yeah.
Like there's a really good Game Rant story that kind of breaks down like the player numbers and player counts of like GTA 5 versus Red Dead 2. And then they also quote, it's a Kotaku story that was doing the reports about the like GTA Vice City or the GTA PS2 trilogy that's kind of being talked about. It looks like it's being done by Rockstar. If I were to take a guess, I would think this is like the second studio in Rockstar that was originally doing the GTA Online and Red Dead Online updates, while like a more core studio of Rockstar is doing whatever GTA 6 stuff they're doing, at my guess. Whereas I know, like, when Call of Duty Warzone came out, the support studios and the main studios might have been working on it at some point to push it out the door. That could also be happening with Remaster. But yeah, basically what ended up happening is, to go back to the beginning of me talking about this, is that Red Dead Online, comparatively to GTA Online, the concurrent players for Red Dead Online on Steam is 18K, and GTA Online is 130K.
Yeah.
That might also be because Red Dead Online is not as popular on Steam, because the hacking is kind of fucked up there, and there's some shit. So I'm guessing more people are on consoles. But yeah, GTA 5 and GTA 5 Online, or GTA Online, definitely has been getting more DLCs and more drops because of the amount of people who've stuck with it and kept it monetized, where I don't think Red Dead is as popular. But in my opinion, I think it is the better game experience, because I'm not getting destroyed in lobbies, as well it being like a newer game for me, and I like the setting.
Well, yeah,
and I played a lot of the older Online.
It's like the thing that like attracts you with stuff like GTA Online is like you can make custom races that take place on tracks in the sky, right? Like there isn't that kind of versatility that exists within like the Red Dead Online player experience, and so it's not hard to understand why GTA Online has. I should say GTA 5, because I don't think GTA Online is sold separately, is it?
You can buy it separately
Oh,
now,
okay, cool. Well, now they finally did that. That's the thing like I really wanted them
It's
to
like
do at
$20
launch.
still,
Yeah.
I think. I don't know.
But like GTA Online like has a more like I'd say like just a much more interesting sandbox like at face like value, even if there are things about like the nuances of RDO's sandbox that I think are more interesting and like better, such as the lower player count in lobbies.
And it's such a bigger map too. Like I will sometimes see two people in one of the towns, because there's so many towns in GTA Online as well. Okay, yeah, in Red Dead Online, I mean. GTA Online, it's still only you have to buy GTA 5, but I'm sure most of the continued purchases of GTA 5 are because of online as well. But yeah, I think the possibility sphere is like bigger in GTA Online, where you have races and cars. You have people who want to buy cars. There's like more stuff you can kind of buy. I think in Red Dead Online, you're limited to like horses, clothing, and weapons. Whereas and horses, they're all kind of the same. In GTA Online, they got weird with it, and they're selling motorcycles and cars and flying cars and Tron bikes and jets and helicopters. And then the variety of game modes they can kind of release are a lot more varied. And their most recent update is it's like a driving like update where they have a bunch of new races that were added recently as well. But I think like GTA Online, it's like I'm just like in Los Santos trying to do a mission to get money to want to play this game more.
Yeah.
And then someone just blows up my truck.
Yeah, and someone
I'm trying to make deliveries in. I'm like,
someone on
okay,
a flying jet
I don't want to play this anymore.
Like in a jet bike just bombs you from the sky, and there's nothing you could have done to stop them.
Yeah, or some player will chase me down and murder me, because that's what the people who are high level do when they're bored.
Oh, yeah.
Is they go around messing with players.
Yeah.
Which, that happens once in a blue moon in Red Dead Online, where I'm in a town doing something, and then another player shows up and shoots me, and maybe we get in a gunfight, or I go and run off the other way. Or I load explosive rounds. Like, I was in Blackwater getting out of a mission. I was going to go into a shop, and some guy walks around the corner and gets off his horse, and the first thing I do is load explosive rounds into my gun and shoot him, because just in case, and it's a video game.
Yeah, you're careful.
Yeah,
you can't take any chances.
But I smoked him, like right when he turned the corner. He was just gone. I felt really bad, but I was like, whatever. And then I flipped lobbies, because after you do that, you flip lobbies so someone doesn't you don't get into this 10-minute drawn out dumb thing.
Yeah, to a grudge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, to go on from it, like, yeah, there's like the Kotaku story talking about how I think there was also a Rockstar was having a presentation talking about their core set of video games, which are now just like the Grand Theft Auto. The pillars of like their video games are the Grand Theft Auto trilogy and 4, GTA 5 and GTA Online. That's where they make their money now, as well as like their it was like an internal presentation they were giving to investors or something. And then they talked about, you know, Red Dead and Red Dead 2 and then a little bit of Midnight Club and stuff. But yeah, they're talking about like going forward, we have this GTA Remastered Trilogy, which is going to come out on all the consoles like Xbox One, PS4, PS5, and the Series X, and then Switch. I read this and I was like, oh man, I'll play these games again. I'm not going to play a lot of them. I'll probably play these for like 3 hours, but I'm pretty ready to like I played Vice City and San Andreas so much when I was a kid because they're these big games and you're 13 and you don't have your own money.
Yep.
And you can just do whatever the fuck you want to in Vice City and San Andreas and just go make your own fun.
Yeah.
And I like the worlds in those.
Yeah. Like the only one of these games that I messed with was Grand Theft Auto 3. And that was because we were my grandmother was in town, and you know something that she does every weekend in Lubbock, or did, was garage sailing. So we went on a series of garage sales here in San Antonio, and I was given like an allowance of $10 to spend, and I ended up buying Grand Theft Auto 3 and a couple of copies of Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. I was very much you could, yeah, that I've always been like this, I'll say. Yeah, and I think I played Grand Theft Auto 3 for a while. I don't think I ever finished it, but I got to the point where like the second island opens up, and then you start doing jobs for, I believe, the Yakuza.
Yeah, and I will say, like, I've never even played GTA 3, but I think like these 3 games are so like you can kind of hop into any of them and have a pretty good time. And the people who played them when they came out or around that PS2 era when they were popular, like for me, they're very like informative of like my youth and what I did for fun and like my music taste as well in a weird way.
Oh yeah.
Like to start with, like I was at my cousin's house and I was like 10 and he was playing Vice City and I'm like, this game looks dope. You can just shoot people and drive people, run people over, or like do whatever you want. What's an open world game? I've never heard of this. I play Spyro, Ratchet and Clank, and like I'm trying to remember what other PS2 games I played at the time. But yeah,
Jack
I don't know.
Daxter.
Jack and Daxter, yeah.
That's one. I know that one.
Gran Turismo. But like going like Jack and Daxter is kind of an open world, but it's not this like urban area with a radio and cars you recognize in the 80s and Miami, or like GTA 3 with like New York and like crime. I mean, all of these are obviously crime, but that's like the New York mafia crime and like gangster stuff. And then San Andreas being like San Francisco, California, a little Las Vegas, and you're like doing I'm trying to think of like iconic 90s like gangster movies that this like San Andreas took a lot of like inspiration.
We'll say
from.
inspiration. We'll kindly say inspiration.
Yeah, or a direct like rip off.
I mean, we could say
yeah, it's fine. It's a great game.
I mean, yeah,
it's got a bunch of. I mean, it starts in Los Santos with you doing that, and it kind of when you get to the other 2 cities, you're doing a lot different stuff, and it's a lot less about like gang banging, as they say. But yeah, like the soundtracks in Vice City, I still have them on my phone for San Andreas and GTA 5 as well. Like I got me into funk. I got me into like alternative rock and like some classic rock and stuff. And they're just like open enough where like I probably played Vice City for a year on and off, same as San Andreas. I never beat Vice City.
Yeah.
I beat San Andreas. Like, those are just those experiences. A lot of time you're making your own fun. These were like before I got really big into like Halo, maybe about the same time, or I got into like a lot of online gaming on like PS3, where those were what I was spending my time playing a year of. Where when I think about it, Grand Theft Auto San Andreas serves as like a hobby game for me that a live service game does, where there's so much stuff in that. And I think that kind of continues forward with like what Rockstar is doing, more into story, but you can still kind of make your own fun, and a lot of open world games pull from them. So I'm excited. I'll pay for it again. Let's go.
Yeah, I don't know if I don't have any like real attachment to these. I don't know if I'd ever like mess with them again, but like this makes sense, right? Like it makes sense that you would want to update these because these are available on, I believe, like you can play all of these like Grand Theft Auto games like on like a PS4 or Xbox One. Um, and I think those are just like ports. I don't know. I don't think they're particularly like what we would consider remasters. But I get like
Yeah, they're ports. They're like the PS2 ports, and I think some of them are mobile
yeah,
ports from like Android. Might have been the Switch version.
yeah. So I get
And then
why.
these came out on Xbox as well at some point, like the trilogy did, like original Xbox.
Yeah, yeah. So I get why you would like remaster these and re-release them, especially if like your company's like we lost we lost like I don't know like the sort of the dude who had been like the creative lead for the entirety of the studio's life. So like take some extra time to really decide what GTA 6 is actually going to be because like they haven't told us anything about that game yet. Um,
Yeah, I
and like
remember the name.
re-release
It was
these.
Boys in the Hood. Was a big inspiration for GTA San Andreas. Anyway.
Yeah. So like yeah, this makes sense, and I get why they do this. I don't know if I'll like mess with these.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. And these are being like redone in like Unreal Engine as well, so we could see some upgraded graphics and better frame rate and all that. And they're saying they're going to try to keep the menus the same. I think there might have been. I don't remember if there's leaked footage of this, but the article talks about sources claim to have seen snippets of the game in action, and it reminded me of them of like a heavily modded version of GTA title. Obviously still in development, could be subject to change, but yeah, there's stuff being done this. I will say, I think San Andreas is a good one to go back to because that game is pretty big, and it has like an RPG light mechanics in it where you are leveling up CJ's skills to where you go to the gym and you can make him buff. If you eat a lot, he'll gain weight, he'll lose weight. Your gun skills will get better to where like at a point you'll dual wield pistols or Uzis, and you just play differently, and it has the same stuff you saw in like GTA 4 and 5 and Red Dead 2 where like you can upgrade your stamina and your health.
Yeah.
Even your driving skills, your piloting skills, and your boat skills have like a meter that as you're doing that more, it's going up.
Yeah.
Because that's what a lot of it I did when I wasn't doing story missions. I just wanted to level those up for fun.
Yeah. And it's interesting. Yeah, because like it's interesting that they are like reportedly going to be on the Unreal. Like I mean, this like within that same paragraph where they mention the Unreal Engine, they do sort of talk about how the idea is to stay very true to the like PS2 era ness of these titles. So like I guess that is a reason why you would use something like Unreal as opposed to say using Rockstar's like proprietary engine.
Yeah, and I think keeping to the like PS2-ness of these games
Oh, it's a good
is
idea.
we're also at a point where we're seeing like the indie space coming out with games that use this art style as well. So I think this being like remastered fits into that a lot. Like you were playing that like the Dark Souls of PS1 looking games, and I think that is very nostalgic in a way. And I think I'm curious to see what that means of keeping it to the PS2-ness of it, or maybe it's like gonna make it look like GTA 5 on PS4 or like PS3, or just kind of keep it within that wheelhouse. I'm curious to see what they end up doing with it
all of
and
the
what they decide to do with the graphics.
all of the protagonists will still have their same very blocky textures and models, but the world and cars and guns are going to be very hyper realistic. Mark my
Yeah, they're all
words. Yeah,
4K.
all
I
4K textures.
like there's this picture of the protagonist from GTA 3 and his hair just has that polygonal like
Oh
downward
my
angle.
god, it's
If they keep that,
terrible.
he shows up in GTA San Andreas. I think you race him or something.
Yeah, yeah,
I don't.
yeah. He shows up for a bit. I don't even remember that character's name.
I don't think he has a character in GTA 3. I don't remember.
Like,
But
yeah,
3 is cool. I played Vice. I played like those PSP versions of the Grand Theft Auto games were neat too. Like I played Liberty City Stories and never played 3 really. But they give you motorcycle, which that's what Vice City and San Andreas added is motorcycles.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm just hyping. I want to come back one week and you're like, yeah, I played a bunch of San Andreas, Travis. I'm like, yes.
That's not gonna happen.
Yeah. Well, when you were talking about Resident Evil 4, I was thinking about my PS2 days and I was like, oh yeah, there was a time where I only played Resident Evil 4 and GTA San Andreas like over and over again as well. Nostalgia. All right. Moving on to other games. Talk to me about Plague Tale Innocence. My friend beat it, said I should play it because it's really cool. And let me ask, this is one of those games where it's the camera is close up to you, kind of like a Gears of War, where you
a third
feel
person.
a lot like the character, and it's very cinematic. Well, it's like closer than a regular third person
No,
game,
it's
right?
about The Last of Us. Like it is that like sort of like that sort of style that people recognize from like Sony's like in-house style of third person action games. It's more or less that. Like
Okay.
it'll pull out a bit when you get into like gameplay situations like we're doing stealth because this is a stealth adventure game. But it's pretty recognizable in that style. It's kind of like Focus Home Interactives because it's the publisher of this title. They're kind of version of that with all of the associated jank of a game published by Focus Home Interactive. But yeah, this is a game where just an action like stealth action game where you play as Amicia de Rune, and as she sort of tries to protect her brother Hugo in the wake of basically the murder of her entire family by the Inquisition. This is set during the Hundred Years' War, right? So that sort of that large scale conflict between the countries of France and England, right? And so like the whole game is you fleeing from the forces of the Inquisition and trying to find a safe haven to take care of your brother and um, both bond with him because Amicia and Hugo have never really met before the events of this game. He grew up very sickly and he like hasn't been able to be around anyone aside from his mother, who has been his constant caretaker. And also you have and alongside like bonding with your brother, your main objective is to like protect him because he is being hunted by the Inquisition because he carries basically a blood condition, right? He has this condition called uh the Immacula, right? It's a two-part name, but it is just called the Immacula, which is some sort of prophesized disease that has heralded the end times of some sort that also brings about this huge rat plague. Because that's the thing that
Hmm.
happens in this game is the plague and swarms of rats. Like this game opens and you are Amicia going through like the hunting grounds next to your estate because y'all are nobles. And your dog gets eaten by a swarm of rats.
Well, those rats aren't getting into my house unless they have their vaccination card. Jokes.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So what happens after the murder of your whole family is this like about 15-hour stealth adventure where you're trying to sort of keep Hugo under control. He's like you're a teenager and he's a like 8-year-old maybe, right? So like the both of you are these really like awkward kids who don't know how to talk to each other. Like Amicia spends like the first couple of hours of the game like going off on Hugo in a real way, because she's just trying to get him to understand that they can't go back home and that both of their parents are dead. Um, and
I've seen movies like
yeah,
this.
and you throw that
Yes.
exactly, yeah, like you throw that at Hugo, and he's immediately like rejecting that notion because like he doesn't understand what death is. Um, and like it,
The coming of age
yeah,
story, but with plague rats.
it's this kind of this coming of age thing, and like it's a pretty like fun and like really harrowing. Like it gets pretty dark. Um, in a couple of instances, like one of the earliest encounters you have with the rats is you're going through a village, the catacombs of like a village church, right? As you've been chased through this village because its inhabitants have gone mad, because the plague has ravaged the town and killed all these people, and they're being led by some fucko named Gregor, who he lost his son to the plague, to the bite is what they're calling it, because it's being spread by rats. And he thinks y'all are also carriers of the plague, so he's going to kill you and your brother, and you have to go through this whole like sequence, this whole elongated that has to take a life for the first time, right? It has that moment of like kid doing a murder and having to sit with it before doing another four. Um, I think its core mechanics handle it better than certain properties, like say Tomb Raider, but it still does kind of hit that, almost hits that like ludonarrative peak.
Well, I'm sure after you murder this first person, you don't go on to murder 200 other people, breaking
No,
that.
no, there's less than 200 people in this game. Yeah,
That was a Tomb Raider reference because
yeah,
it
you kill a lot of people in that game.
captivates that moment so much, and you killing one person, then you go off and have action
Immediately
game
doing
after that.
headshots in that game. Yeah, yeah, you just get into the situation where he's like the thing with Amicia, her whole like way of interacting with the world and combat is a sling, right? It's like she does this one thing and then she like has to look at her sling because you just upgraded it to be able to kill people. Um, right? So like you use the sling, you hit someone in the head with it, it's an instant kill. As the game continues, enemies get stuff like armor, and you have to find ways of dealing with that, which is where you meet a kid named Lucas, who's an alchemist, and he gives you the necessary recipe to make alchemy stuff that can like light torches, corrode armor, so that way guards take it off, put people to sleep, that kind of thing. So like it's this survival like crafting kind of element that gets added in pretty early on and is like pretty easy enough to sort of balance alongside the stealth action portion of it, right? Because you have upgrades, you have, I don't want to say like crafting trees, but you have like about 9 different fields you can put resources in to upgrade things like your ammo count, your alchemic uh, solutions, and Amicia's sling, right? That type of deal. And it's not like super important to the game because this is mostly a narrative stealth adventure more than anything. So you could probably get through most of the game without doing these upgrades. It just makes it a lot easier to get through like the kind of rough combat encounters.
Well, that's cool. It sounds like you've enjoyed it and you enjoyed beating it. I think this is on Game Pass. I might mess with it.
Yeah, it was on Game Pass. When last I had it, I got this like free on Epic, and I have a friend who will take any opportunity to go off about like a Plague Tale. So I was like, okay, fine, I'll go ahead and sit with this. Yeah, it's about like 15 hours, I'd say. Like, yeah, you can sit with it. They have a sequel, coming out, like a Plague Tale, I think Requiem is what it's called. And I'm not exactly sure what I want out of a sequel here because the game kind of ends like definitively enough that I'm happy with it. So I'm not sure what that sequel is going to be. I think I'm interested in it though because like Amicia and Hugo are like two really strong characters. Um, and like they've proven they can do some pretty interesting character writing with like all the pals that Amicia and Hugo meet, in the way that the game also leverages like their abilities. Because like for instance, you meet a smith's kid, like a blacksmith kid named Roderick, and because he's a blacksmith kid, like he's really big and strong. So whereas Amicia needs to use her sling to take people out, when Roderick's with you, if you see like if you're behind a guard, you can press like up on the D-pad and Roderick will just go knock him out with his fist because he's so very strong.
All right, so I have some
Yeah, what's
questions.
up?
All right, this kind of seems like, from what I've seen of it, this does have like a Last of Us atmosphere, right? Where it's kind of dark and gritty, and the environments are usually very dark that you're going through, right?
Like some of them, when it wants to be like about the rats, yeah. Like the first time you go through like the village, it's very sunny. You're being chased by people, and as you progress through the village, get to the church, you're going into the catacombs. So where you mostly interact with rats is in very dark areas because the sort of conceit here is that they don't like the light. They can't be around like fire and torches and such.
And then the other question I have is, does this have any like fantasy trappings that show up in like some of these games set in older periods, or is this straight
Well, it's
like
not it's not straight historical,
played?
right? Like it is a game where you are protecting a child who has a potentially world-ending disease building inside of him, right? Like
Yeah,
it's not it's not particularly like hard history, right? Like it uses the Hundred Years' Wars to justify like the only time that really comes up is in a level where you're following an aqueduct, right? Like an above ground aqueduct, as these like used to be made, and you're walking through a battlefield, like the ruins of a battlefield, and you're just having to walk through an innumerable amount of corpses. Like you're having to walk on top of like dead people. Um, like that's what it uses the history to justify having a level like that and like showing off this like very I say this in air quotes like beautiful and like very disgusting sort of like world that they wanted to make here, and it's very like well
yeah.
implemented, I'd say.
Because I've looked at this game, and I've also thought of an alternate thing where like you're not fighting like mutated rats, or like you're not going to like cult rituals where they're like putting their blood and stuff and summoning things. This is pretty realistic in that
Yeah,
like
the rats are like
you kind of have this adventure in like this setting that's trying to stay as close to like what I would say, realism.
yeah, like it's there's no like the rats are naturally occurring rats, they're the rats you find out in the wild. There is some stuff that like you get into like blood rituals when you get like later into the game and begin sort of investigating the Inquisition,
Ooh.
right? Because it has this heightened like sect of the Catholic Church that is the Inquisition. The people who come up to your house, kill your family. Um, like they're up to some naughty stuff in regards to the rats and like
Yeah.
the blood of like your family's blood history, right? And like specifically like this is specifically why they want your brother.
Okay. Well, it sounds like there might be some fun twists and turns toward the end of this game that I might have to go see for myself.
Yeah, like it is an interesting game. It gets like again like it gets really dark. Like there is a section of the game where you need to get through a farmhouse. Um, and like the thing that you have to do in order to get through it is you get the rats away from the other side of this farmhouse. And how you get the rats to move across that farmhouse is by luring a pig in, closing the door behind it, and then shooting the lights out around where the pig is, and the pig is eaten by the rats. It's that kind of thing. Like it is going to ask you to do some like kind of grody stuff, but it's not.
Yes, I did see you tweeting about the pig and being like, "Oh
Oh yeah,
no."
no, I'm not like the second because you can interact like you get the pig in there by like moving its feed bag, and that's like I second I saw that prompt, I was like I am not down with this, but there's more of the game, it's like it's gonna be like the game can be a bummer at times, but like I think the like core narrative around Amicia and Hugo and like that relationship that forms in the wake of this trauma is very interesting and good.
Yeah, it reminds me of some of the puzzle stuff that like Inside has, where you're like pushing people around and people die because you're trying to like get through the game or the puzzles
Yeah.
and stuff.
Like, and
But
if you still have like reservations about it, I know there was an E3 demo that was like the Battlefield level I just told you about. That is like it's a really good like vertical slice of that game. Like it shows you basically how you're going to interact with the world and and how you also interact with other people you meet, like as far as enemies and potential allies. It's a really good
yeah,
demo for that game.
Well, I could definitely give it a shot. I'm intrigued by it now. Speaking of blood, you played a beta for Back for Blood.
Yeah.
What's up? I didn't get into it. We were gonna do some stuff on it, but you need PS Plus on PlayStation. It did have crossplay, but I think I was just like, I'll mess with this after we do the podcast, and then you ended up playing it. So I'm like, all right, what's up?
Yeah, so
How's it
they had
going?
this 4-day beta. Like it ended today, like at 2, I think, so it ended a few hours ago. Um, and this
Well,
this
fuck.
is yeah. Yeah, so this is Turtle Rock Studios, a studio made up of the people who brought us games like Left 4 Dead, right?
Oh, you can't forget about
Yeah,
Evolve.
or Evolve, but like this game is so much more in conversation with like Left 4 Dead than Involve in a real way. Like this is Back for Blood, like the name as it implies, as well as all of their like marketing materials. Like the people who made these games you really love, like these arcadey zombie shooters that defined like cooperative like shooters for the better part of a decade, like are back, baby, and they're here with Back for Blood,
Yeah.
and it's not that good.
Oh
Um,
no, I've heard some people really liking it.
yeah.
Did you play PC mouse and keyboard? Or did
No,
you
I
use
did. I did controller.
controller?
I did not have the
Okay.
time to sit with like the mouse and keyboard aspect of this game. I used controller. Like the thing here about it is like it's a Left 4 Dead. Like it's a Left 4 Dead spiritual successor, but it's a Left 4 Dead spiritual successor made in 2021, right? Like it has all the trappings of your modern like co-op shooter, right? You have a bunch of guns that all have stats and numbers. You have attachments that make those numbers go up. You have resources that you're buying to use. You have like a currency you're earning as you're going through levels, so that way you can go to the sort of store box that's in every safe room, and you can buy bonuses like health bonuses, stamina bonuses, buffs for your secondary items like your bandages, as well as your grenades and such. It has like all of these like very modern trappings and like all these systems that complicate it. Like it has deck building in it, because these like cards that you accumulate and buy uh, using supply resources that you get for completing runs in these chapters. These like much shorter than anything you'll find in Left 4 Dead, but like with more like pause points basically than Left 4 Dead had. Whereas like Left 4 Dead is a campaign, like has 4 chapters. A Back for Blood campaign that's in this beta has like 8. Um,
Yeah, I saw that when I tried to load in a game, but it didn't end up working.
yeah,
I will say, like all of these things you're talking about, like I do enjoy systems on systems in games, and I do like being able to mess around with gun stats. And I think the idea of using decks sounds really
yeah,
interesting. And then like the player perks and all this stuff, because this is like there is something that I will agree with you on. Like we kind of talked about this before. There is something very pure about the Left 4 Dead 1 and 2 experiences where you load up in that game, you pick your character, and you go. You're not messing with anything else.
yeah,
To where, yeah, you have the 2021 stuff, and they want to make this a deeper. What I will say,
yeah. Sort of seeking
in their words,
continuous,
maybe a deeper
yeah,
thing, or maybe more of a live
seeking
thing, to
continuous
where
player
a deeper
engagement.
might not be better, you know?
Yeah, like I mean, the thing here is like the deck building stuff is actually surprisingly the thing that like kind of irritated me the least here, right? Um, it lets you build out some relatively interesting builds. I will say it's not super interesting on like the default difficulty of like its campaign, because on the default difficulty, like I don't think individual zombies pose much of a threat, and playing as a character who spawns with a baseball bat with like barbed wire, on it, right? That classic of the zombie genre. Thanks, The Walking Dead. Um, Spawning with that kind of character who like just by default starts with a melee weapon, my first instinct is like I want to upgrade my stamina because you have a stamina bar now, which dictates how far you can run and how many times you can swing a melee weapon before your character gets tired. And I also have a card that is automatically played where every melee kill I do heals me for like 5 points of health. So, like on its default difficulty, I didn't see much of a reason to engage with most of its guns. because I was a character who all I was doing was upgrading my baseball bat, so that way it did more damage. And you upgrade your melee weapons by like just finding better versions of them, or by like buffing them up in the store crate that you get in the safe rooms. It's like on the default difficulty, I can't say it was that interesting. I want to make this a much more approachable game in that way, I think. And the thing I noticed, like with the guns of this game, because you have all of these like systems around like their like modding them, and also having like specific buffs that apply to specific types of weapons, and also each individual character carrying their own ammo as opposed to the ammo being tied to like how new the gun is, or like picking up like sort of like ammo dumps that exist in the level. Guns are so much more precious as like individual items than they ever were in something like Left 4 Dead, because like there's just it's like as you're modding a gun, you don't want to
Yeah.
dump it because you're like, oh, I just put like this tier 3 scope on it. I put a fast reload mag on my M4. I put a compensator on its barrel so it's doing more damage. Its sight is better, and my reload time is ridiculous because
Yeah, to whereas in like Left 4 Dead, like I'm out of ammo, I toss that weapon and go grab another
yeah,
one, and I just keep rolling.
yeah. It's like I don't know if I'm particularly interested in that aspect of this game's gameplay. The other thing is like with character abilities too, like because you have like Left 4 Dead is a game where you have four characters in each campaign, right? And they don't offer buffs or anything. Um, Back 4 Blood has, I believe, eight characters in total, and each of them giving like their own like buffs. Like the character I played as, her name is Holly, I think, and she gives the team like increased stamina, which again, like adding that stamina buff on top of the stamina buffs that I can get using like constantly replaying cards that give me stamina buffs, kind of unstoppable on normal difficulty. But like every other character has like their own special things, including stuff like more ammo or like better aim, and just like better gun damage, that type of deal. So it's a bit overcomplicated in some ways. And the other thing here is it's like the act of playing it is so busy because the HUD is a lot, right? It's not particularly like as relaxed as something like Left 4 Dead. And the other thing here is these characters are quipping all the time. It's like every character is Nick from Left 4 Dead 2, but their dialogue isn't like half as pointed or like half as like well developed
Yeah.
because you have eight characters as opposed to these like four characters who are always going to be interacting with each other. You have eight
Oops, you
characters.
got all
Yeah,
nicks.
you have like eight characters who anyone can be at any point in time in like a different combination of like those four characters. So their dialogue doesn't even like target each other that in particularly interesting ways.
Yeah, well, it seems like from what you're saying, they put a lot more time into like the gun customization and those kind of like building a deck and doing all these attachments and all of that instead of like the character interaction stuff, which is like a very cool
Yeah,
and different
yeah, like
part of
it's a
like what
reasonable.
made like me enjoy Left 4 Dead 1 and
Yeah,
2.
and I get why you decide to focus on that type of thing, right? Like it's very reasonable to be like we're going to like these characters are just sort of vehicles to help players make builds, right? Because in between every chapter of the game or every chapter of a campaign, you're drawing more cards to use from your deck to enhance your character. So like the person I was playing with, by the time we got to the end of that game, they had pulled like six stamina cards. So they had effectively doubled their stamina and were able to run
That's pretty
through
cool.
every scenario in that level. Um, and also like just go ham on the ridden is what they're called in this because they're plague ridden, air quote. Go through the ridden with like their melee weapons, just go to town. So I think like there is probably a fun game in this. Like I will probably mess with this when it gets to Game Pass. Um, I think I'm definitely going to like suggest starting on the difficulty above normal. Uh, because like the other thing about normal difficulties, there's no friendly fire, right? So you don't even have to particularly be careful about where you're aiming in the way that you'd have to be in something like Left 4 Dead. So like I would suggest starting off on the difficulty like above normal, so that way you have a bit more lethal zombies. You can't necessarily rely on things like the melee health recovery system that I had just more or less been able to do the entirety of that campaign I played through. And
Yeah.
I think like there are gonna be more like hazard cards that you have to play, because like in between rounds, like when you interact with the deck, you have cards that you can play once, right? That give you like abilities and such, like making your melee push, because you have a melee just push feature to bash with your fist, like turning that into a knife that doesn't count as like a melee weapon. And then you have stuff like the stamina increase that you can play in between every round. And in between every round, you also have containment cards, which are like enemy buffs, essentially, or challenges that include things like this entire level is going to be taken over by mist. And as well as like the normal zombies now have like plus 25% more health and are do a bit more damage, like that type of deal.
Well, I do hope this comes to PC Game Pass, because I know I want to sink my teeth into the systems of this game and see what it looks like on the other end when I have like 10 or 20 hours, and what these systems actually do mean, and how much you can push these characters away from like how you start them out as.
Yeah, it's coming to
Yeah.
PC. Like I just opened up the Game Pass page. It's platforms Xbox Series X and S, Xbox One,
Yeah.
and Windows 10
Oh,
PCs.
cool. It does have crossplay. When I loaded it up and went to the options, it was like, "Hey, here's your Back for Blood ID," and I was like, "Okay, interesting. I'll give it a shot." So I have two. There are two things I've been thinking about while we were talking about this. When Turtle Rock decided to make a what I will call a sequel spiritual successor to Left 4 Dead, there is like a couple of different paths they could have gone down. They could have gone down the path where they are making Left 4 Dead and keeping all those core systems basically the same,
Yeah.
but modernizing it with more aim down sight stuff and making it more console friendly, but kind of expanding the best parts of Left 4 Dead without adding a lot of new ingredients. And I think not we, but like Turtle Rock made Evolve, and there are bits of Evolve's customization that I see sprinkled into here,
Yeah.
like the deck system. That's kind of like how you leveled up your character as you were playing through Evolve as like the human characters. As you wouldn't you get stronger as human characters as the round get on, or was it just the monster? Do you know
Um,
anything about that? I'm
what
trying to
I've
remember.
only played the beta, but what I remember is like the monster gets stronger, and like the humans also can modify their resources, like their abilities, if I remember that
Yeah.
correctly.
So they do that, and there is a lot of the releases that when I watched some videos about people talking about what that game was doing back then that made it not as popular. Like, you remember they had like a $70 version that gave you access earlier to the game
Yeah, yeah, they had
for Evolve than
yeah,
other
like
people,
Evolve is a game that
multiple
is
editions.
notorious for like the first time we saw Evolve was an announcement of its pre-order DLC, right? Like Evolve is like the most notorious, maybe one of the most notorious game of like 2014, because like that game was the most convoluted example of like different editions of a game with different bonuses that you can't possibly get all of them, even if you buy like the most expensive version of this game.
Yeah, and there is a deluxe pack of this game that does come with like unique cards and
Yeah.
upgrades, as well as I'm pretty sure they've talked about DLC characters and DLC packs, and it's so, I think, antiquated in a way, because you've seen Call of Duty and Battlefield and Overwatch and Apex and Fortnite. All of their DLC is free to keep their player base, and they really don't. Besides Warzone, like, you can go and buy gun packs to get better weapons and mods, but you don't see a lot of the other games like that sell you upgrades to make you better or chase a meta per se, to where you're not like, there is some outcome. I haven't done it too much, that I can see it being pay to win in the PvP to make your deck really good because you're buying better characters and stuff. But from what I hear, the PvP is
Yeah,
not as good. I watched,
Of
there's a YouTuber called Skill Up who did a really good video talking about his time with the beta, and he seems to think a lot of people are going to stick with the PvE stuff more if they release a lot of maps. And that leads me to like the second thing I'm thinking about is having all these diverse builds kind of gives me personally a reason to come back and try to replay missions more often, to where I'm making weirder builds with a character or trying to do specific runs or making a really shitty deck and trying to see if I can beat this on a hard mode or something.
Yeah.
There's like a space of like possibilities that's a little bigger.
Yeah.
Like I said, I want to sink my teeth into it and see how those actually work.
Yeah, and it's just like that's not something that I was ever going to get like a great handle on with this beta specifically, because like you start and you have a starter deck, right? And the starter deck is, efficient enough, and like I said, like you have to really get to the higher difficulty levels to get even a hint of like a game mode where you need to really be thinking about your cards, because like again, like that starter deck gives me that +10 stamina increase and that like +5 health per melee kill. Um, and I never had to worry about anything else. So like once we get the full
Yeah.
game, and once like maybe you're given like hopefully at the start of the game you're given like more freedom to build a deck as opposed to just going with like a starter deck necessarily. Hopefully once we get that in the main game, it like will be like more interesting from the get go.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you do have the ability to make straight up fucking murderers.
Oh yeah.
Who are like doing the things like there's like the stuff in Red Dead Online where you're killing people, getting health back, and then getting more Deadeye. It sounds like there's like these loops you can get into that a lot of RPGs do where you'll do one thing, it'll trigger another effect, and it'll trigger another effect,
Yeah.
and just are endlessly steamrolling through stuff. Which can also be like, hey, if you're trying to grind like I'm sure there's a character level in this game, and I'm like, yeah, if I want to grind a character level, I'm gonna get as precise as I can and find the best fucking builds and go just be like do these missions as fast as I can.
I don't think there's character levels. I don't recall.
How do you get new cards? Because you do get new cards.
So you do get new cards, right? So there's some things like in individual like campaign missions, you can find random cards in the world. Like for instance, like I was talking about the preciousness of guns earlier. Specifically with me and like an M4 I picked up. I like shortly after I picked up that M4, I also picked up a card that was called a tactical vest, and that gave me like a +30% ammo and damage buff when using assault rifles, which made me just a killer for the rest of that campaign. Like I was unstoppable. But like after you come back from the campaign, you have these things called supplies, and you use supplies to undergo to send people on missions in your camp, because you have a camp, like you have an actual like survivors camp that looks like a sort of like a fort, right? Like it looks like you found like an old like historical fort somewhere in like maybe East Coast like America, and we're like, okay, we're gonna set up here. Um, and you send people on those missions, and like what happens is like you basically use the supplies to buy cards, use the supplies to buy cards and perks, and that gives you stuff like other cards you can add. Like there's one that got was like a leather jacket that gave me like I think +10 health. So like card values range from pretty fine to not half bad. Like I could see myself messing with them if I needed to.
Yeah, so it sounds like there is some grinding to be done.
Yeah, there's grinding. I just don't think it's like associated with like character level in the way that we that we generally think of that kind of thing.
I think there's a battle pass too that'll have some stuff in it as well.
Oh, I'm sure. I would be surprised.
Yeah. That's cool. I'm curious. I think it's coming out pretty soon, isn't it?
Well, it's October.
Yeah. So, yeah. Hey, man. It's going to be on Game Pass. I'll go pick up Game Pass Ultimate to be able to mess with it. Because I at some point, is just going to have that be one of my subscriptions that I'm paying for.
Yeah.
It seems like, that's what that's for.
I mean, and if Halo comes out before October, I'll probably already have Game Pass, so yeah.
Radical. You want to do some more news? You want to run through the news?
Yeah, we can run through the news relatively quickly.
All right. We got Nintendo's Indie World first. I heard a little bit. I know Loop Hero's coming to Switch. I really want to play that. I've heard cool stuff about that on like when it came out on PC.
Yeah. Loop Hero is I was like a sort of indie sensation for the better part of like 2 months, right? And my understanding is it is this kind of play on the clicker like the clicker genre of games that people think is really cool and interesting. I don't have any personal experience with Loop Hero.
Yeah, I could mess with it.
I think
Tetris Effect.
yeah.
Cool.
I think the thing that
Dope. Good
appeals
stuff.
to me the most is probably Eastward, right? This is like an RPG coming from like Chucklefish, and these are that's the publisher behind Stardew Valley and Risk of Rain. Um, like there's like a real sort of like on face value kind of like Earthbound vibe I'm getting here, and this is probably just me shooting in the dark because I've never played Earthbound, but I kind of see a bit of like similarities in some of that aesthetic, and I'm interested in seeing like what this game turns out to be.
I know Chucklefish. Yeah, Stardew Valley. I was like, why do I know Chucklefish? The publisher. Yeah, that's cool. It looks dope. Metal Slug Tactics. I remember when that got announced. I was like, yes, I suck at Metal Slug games, but I want to look at this art and this music, and a slowed down version of it.
I
Rad.
remember that being announced, and then like immediately people were like, the publisher of this game is sending money to the Crowned Prince of Saudi Arabia. Um,
Yeah, that's some
yeah,
shit.
it's wild. The video game industry turns out is kind of wild, actually.
Yeah, and then Axiom Verge 2 on Switch. Very cool. Shovel Knight puzzle thing.
Yeah, Shovel Knight's.
It's like a puzzle quest.
They just say Shovel Knight's new game. Like, just say Shovel Knight Pocket Dungeon.
Yeah, and then Bomb Rush, which is this. Yeah, Bomb Rush Cyberpunk. This is the what Jet Set Radio kind of
Yeah.
like looking things that's coming out. This is the one I'm so ready for because I've wanted like something that looks like Jet Set Radio and Jet Set Future but plays a lot better because I'm bad at those games, but I love the soundtrack and the art style
Yeah.
and everything they're kind of vibing with.
Yeah, I should play Jet Set Radio.
I played a little bit just because I think it's like on backwards compatibility on Xbox and they're rough.
Yeah, it's pretty cheap on Steam. I should.
The soundtracks are good. They're on Spotify.
Yeah.
I would recommend fucking
Yeah,
with
like
them.
I should because like I know Jet Set is like a very big he's like a composer I listen to a lot is Too Mellow, and like Jet Set Radio is like a big influence on like Too Mellow sensibilities.
Yeah. Let's see. We got this Crysis Remastered Trilogy that got a trailer. This is not the because they did remaster Crysis 1,
Yep.
didn't they?
Yeah, that's on the you can find the first game on the Epic Store. This is the whole shebang, baby. All 3 games.
Yeah. I will say this shit looks really good. I bought Crysis 3 on PS3 and tried to play it a lot. Obviously, I don't think it ran that well, but I just remember vibing with like when you're changing like accessories on your weapon, you would hold the weapon up and you would switch with like triangle, circle, X, and square to specific accessories. And it had like this holographic HUD that would shoot up. And I always liked being able to switch from like armor mode to speed mode and all this shit that like Crysis is known for. Because you're just like this dude in a suit who's a one-man fucking murder machine predator looking motherfucker.
Oh yeah, I never messed with Crysis. I remember always like seeing it and like for like probably like 15 years Crysis was like this sort of the meme of like can your PC run Crysis, it was like the test for whether or not your gaming PC could handle video games.
Well, I will talk about like, yeah, it's popular for the main stuff, but I think my experiences with this was it does the play space that like Far Cry tries to do a lot.
Yeah.
Or maybe mostly 3. I'll talk about what I've experienced where it is pretty easy for you to switch between stealth, running and gunning and just being like a heavy, which like there's a mode where you can go into where you have extra health and you're slower. And it does being a one man army very well. And if you want to feel like a predator, I would play Crysis. Because one of the options in 3 is that you have the stealth camouflage option where you are invisible while you're like sneaking and crouching.
Yeah.
And then when you start trying to do more stuff, you'll be less invisible, and you have a bunch of silencers you can grab and all that. And the way the campaign is kind of set up, it's linear, but you go from like a big area that has like, it kind of feels like a miniaturized Far Cry setup. You'll beat the area and then you'll go through a tunnel or like a hallway, or something to the next big area. And so that's the campaign. It's a lot of big areas connected together linearly.
Yeah.
So there's some cool stuff in there.
Yeah. I might. I don't know if I can handle a remaster. I think we're gonna get back to that point where Crysis is again this benchmark, but I might see what's up with those.
Yeah, or if you can find 2 or 3 pretty
Oh,
cheap, I'd
probably.
recommend
I'm
that.
sure
I
if
had a
I
good
I'm sure if I
time. Yeah.
got on Steam, I could find Crysis 2 and 3 like no problem, no
Yeah.
sweat.
And I didn't realize Crytek was the dudes who made Hunt Showdown. That I want to get that on console, but I hear it just does not play well. Like that is a PC ass game where it's got PC ass controls that don't really have that good of like
Yeah.
bullet magnetism on console. Like my friend bought it, was like, "Man, we're gonna play Hunt Showdown on PlayStation." I'm like, "I'll wait for the reviews," and he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna pre-order it," and I was like, "Good luck with that,
Yeah.
boy."
Oh yeah, I mean Hunt is like a game that had like a real pivot from like what it was sold as to like what it is now, which is this sort of PvE PvP thing. Um, and like yeah, like watching people play that. I think because there's a Waypoint stream where they played Hunt Showdown as a part of their Save Point charity event, and it the minutia of like how you play that game looked like so much. It's like I could never play this on console.
Yeah, I have loved streams I've watched of that. That game is so wild,
Yeah,
and I love the art style, and I love the weird kind of almost steampunky weapons you
yeah,
get, or like you have a revolver that has like 20 rounds and it's got this giant like cylinder feeding bullets into it and
yeah, and like
stuff.
the vibe of Hunt is this like sort of American, like supernatural, like gas powered America era kind of thing.
Yeah, almost like a little bit after with the
Yeah,
western.
it's really like cool. If there's like an aesthetic of America that I like, it's kind of that because it's very much like the sort of the air quote decay of
Yeah, shooting zombies in the
of the
bayou.
glory days of like the West. It's very interesting to me.
Yeah, if I ever got better at like mouse and keyboard, I could see myself fucking with
Oh yeah,
that. Let's
let's see what
see.
else do we have.
Life is Strange 2 True Colors prequel DLC was
Yeah,
announced. That's
yeah,
correct.
yeah.
You can run a radio station, play D&D, and try out dating apps, according to this sub-headline on Polygon by Cass Marshall.
Yeah, so this is the prequel DLC to like the next Life is Strange game, and where you play as Steph, who is a character who shows up in Life is Strange Before the Storm, right? And when she shows up in that game, she's like a teenager at the school you're going to, and you have a really just a very good interaction with her, like in the beginning of that first episode, where you play like a kind of bastardized D&D game with her and her friend Mikey, right? And so like this is like she's there for the rest of that game, and then this is like she's gonna show up as one of the supporting characters in True Colors, which is exciting because like stuff in Before the Storm is great. Um, and like this looks like a like you go through 4 seasons as like the her as this radio DJ slash record store manager, right? It looks like you're going through like summer, specifically the last day of Pride Month. You're going through a bit of Halloween. You're seeing some Christmas and something that vaguely looks like spring. I think I see some Easter. It's like some Easter eggs around the store. So that looks interesting. It looks cozy in that way that like wholesome games want to be. And like,
Yeah, and I've watched this trailer. It looks
yeah,
interesting.
I've
You know, so I'll let you finish and then I'll go on
oh,
my
I was
tangent.
just gonna say like I'm probably gonna end up buying like the premium edition of True Colors, so I'll probably play this.
I I will say I would love these games are something I feel like I would have more fun with doing, like the couch co-op experience where you're playing it like a what are those horror games on PlayStation 4,
Um,
the choose your own adventure?
the Until Dawn, right, and the Dark
Yeah, I can
Pictures.
see doing Until Dawn like this. But there's also like this thing in me where it has been very hard for me to go back to games that take place in high school
Yeah,
because like
yeah, yeah.
so
I get it.
I'm 27, 28, and it's been 10 years and none of that drama or like coming of age stuff really hits with me as
Yeah,
much. Like even like Persona 5 and the Persona games, that has been also one of the reasons why I've never beaten those, because it just doesn't appeal to me as much
yeah.
anymore. But I can say that as also I'm gonna go back and watch a bunch of Evangelion, even though that takes place in high school and has all that high school drama shit.
Like,
So, but that's because it's a little more. That's
yeah.
nostalgia.
Well, the drama of
But at
Evangelion.
some point, I do want to play all the Life is Strange stuff. It does appeal to me in a certain way. There's just like a little hump I have to get
Yeah, well, I mean,
over.
like the drama of like something like Evangelion is barely in high school, right? Like we will litigate this next week when we talk about all of Evangelion Rebuild. But but like yeah, like so like True Colors and specifically this DLC Wavelengths isn't set in high school. This is like they are early 20s, right? Like Steph is out of high school. I think Alex is also like early 20s, and like that's like kind of the audience you're interacting with in like the setting of True Colors, which is the city of Haven, that kind of thing. I definitely see
Okay.
that in like the first Life is Strange, like that sort of hesitance to want to deal with like high school drama in like the first Life is Strange, and also Before the Storm. Life is Strange 2 specifically isn't necessarily about like it's about two kids fleeing to the Mexican border to get away from police, right? Um, and so like I get these like criticisms like or like has reservations towards like the first two games, and there's always this thing with Life is Strange is sometimes it does with some of the narratives it wants to tell it can be kind of fraught. So like if you don't want to mess with like the first two, I really like or Life is Strange 1 and Before the Storm, I think that's fine. Like I there's definitely a time where a very um hot mess of a like teenager was very affected by that first game. Like I couldn't listen to Foals by Spanish Sahara or Spanish Sahara by Foals for like a week without tearing up because of the ending of that game, right? Going back to it feels kind of like trite and a little rote, of course, as this kind of stuff does. But like there's enough to enjoy in like Before the Storm before its final episode. And I think like in the later episodes of the first game, like I think those first two Life is Strange games are fine. I haven't played two, and I really need to.
Yeah.
I need to sit down with two.
So I'm trying to remember. So the release order of these is it's Life
Oh,
is
it's wild. Yeah,
Strange,
yeah,
Before the Storm, 2, the one where you're playing as the superhero kid, which is like the one off, and then True Colors.
yeah. So it's like the whole like Life is Strange series release order is like the first game, Before the Storm, which is a prequel to the first game where you play as the side character from the first game, Chloe Price. Um, then there is
Adventures of
yeah,
Captain
Adventures of
Spirit.
Captain Spirit, which is that one-off episode where you play as a kid who shows up for a little bit in Life is Strange 2, and then there's like all of Life is Strange 2, and then there's True Colors, right?
Okay.
That kind of order.
Yeah. So you said True Colors are kind of in their 20s, is and they're people you meet in Life is Strange 2 as well. Is
They
that
haven't. I don't think we're gonna see anyone from Life is Strange 2. That game did so poorly. Like Square Enix has basically put Life is Strange 2 like under the heaviest drug they could find. It really sucks. Like there's, I think it's part of the reason why Dotnod is not touching Life is Strange anymore. This is like Wavelengths and True Colors are being developed by Deck Nine, who are the
I
studio
see
that
that.
made Before the Storm.
Okay, so 2 hasn't finished yet, right? Because it only have a couple
No,
episodes
two's
come out?
finished. Like they finished all of 2. Like it's the 5 episodes of 2. It's complete.
Gotcha. And then True Colors, if you were to bring it down to like, because the first game you have the time travel stuff and you're China changing
Yeah.
stuff, and then 2 is the two brothers going over the New
Yeah.
Mexico.
Yeah.
And then what's True Colors about? I don't remember too much about
Yeah. So they
the
just
release
yeah.
of
So like True
this.
Colors itself is you play as this character named Alex Chen. You reunite with your brother. Like you've been living in the foster care system for most of your life. You reunite with your brother in this town of Haven, right? Which is like very cozy, very warm. It's a Hallmark movie ass town, if there ever was one. And then tragedy strikes. Your brother dies. And Alex kind of has to get to like what's at the bottom of Haven while also dealing with like her own power because she has a power. Her power is and this is how they've phrased it. So I'm gonna just say it, the psychic power of empathy, which is just
Yeah,
reading other people's emotions and seemingly like also reading their thoughts surrounding their emotions. It's the narrative, like the sort of writing around her power is kind of sillier and a bit more contrived than like a
I
one's time
think
travel or two's like
I think
telekinesis.
not to talk about worst properties, but I think Edward has that power in Twilight, or he just reads people's minds. I
Yeah,
don't know. I was watching Twilight the other day, but anyway. So yeah, you said okay. So the main characters in True Colors, it's not as they're not in high school, or it's a
yeah,
little
no, you're
more
out of
young adult.
it's more young
Okay,
adult stuff. Like it's you're out of high school. Like I don't believe Alex is going to like college or anything. It's just you trying to live in this town. They're all like young adults. I think like Steph is what
interesting.
I think did they say age? I don't think they say age, but like yeah, like Steph
Yeah.
is like everyone's adult here.
Well, I could see myself. I own like one and some other stuff. I could see myself watching the like good ending playthroughs on YouTube or
Yeah,
something. Like I did that a little bit with Tales to
yeah,
Borderlands, so I
yeah.
could
I'd say like
see
you
that
can
being
mess
something.
with
I like
one.
I like Chloe. I like the main character of the first game. I think they were fun
Yeah,
in their own like
yeah. I still
ways.
enjoy that first game. There is just that like the opening fourth episode, the opening of the fourth episode of the first Life is Strange game is really gross. It's really terrible. In like how it
Wait, of which
in the
game?
first game,
Oh, the third or fourth
the
episode. You're
fourth
saying?
episode of the first game.
Okay,
It
gotcha. I'll look
it
out
has a
for it.
really gross like sort of like ableist narrative that happens at the beginning of that. That sucks shit and kind of mars like the rest of the game in a real way. But like the conclusion of that was like emotionally affecting enough. Like I told you, like I couldn't listen to a piece of music for a week without tearing up. Like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um,
Let's see.
and
And wavelengths is really interesting
yeah,
to me because I did do some radio DJing at the college where they had it, so that could be fun
yeah,
to experience that through someone else. I don't know.
yeah. I mean, and I don't think like anything bad's gonna happen in Wavelengths because like this is a prequel, and like when you start True Colors, like Steph is still here, so like I don't think you're gonna be like playing a part of this game where like suddenly Steph is like murdered, that kind of thing. It's not gonna
Yeah,
be that thing.
this looks like person simulator
Yeah,
in a way that reminds me of like a little bit of Left Behind in Last of Us with some other stuff,
yeah,
where you're just kind of in the costume store as Ellie, just kind of
yeah.
messing around
So
having
it's gonna
fun.
be
And
like
I could see that being
it's gonna
a
be like a slice of life.
little bit. Yeah, I'm into stuff like that. Hey everyone, Travis here. I was like, hey, we're going to stop the episode here because right after this, we just have a big segment on us talking about Neon Genesis Evangelion and Rebuild of Ava, the anime series and movies. So I'm just going to say, hey, this is the episode about the video games, and we got another video about Ava that I'm just going to post separately because it goes for like 40 minutes. We get into it. Thanks everyone for joining us. Bye.